I think the next session really picks up from Mr. Jairam's and Mr. Panagriya's optimism that, Indian companies will be globally competitive and, there is a lot of gains that we can make in our manufacturing and in services. And I think to do that, to be globally competitive and to run global companies, we need to fix our companies first and to build high-performing teams, to build a next generation of leaders, to professionalize, modernize, not just in equipment and processes in supply chain, but also when it comes to people, because we know that modern businesses run on talent. So with that, we're very, very delighted to have two very distinguished speakers to join us on the panel on building high-performance teams. I'd first like to welcome Mr. Joydeep Mukherjee. Mr. Joydeep Mukherjee comes with nearly 3 decades of experience in the corporate world. He was the Chief Financial Officer at American Express, at MetLife Insurance and HSBC Life. And right now, I think he's done which all of us, I think many of us dream of, is to have successful corporate careers and then to give back to society. He currently runs the operations, accounting, HR, and other corporate functions at 2 socially sustainable companies called I Merit and Anudhi Foundation. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, for joining us. We also have with us Mr. Pradipta Mohapatra, another very, very distinguished speaker. He's been on the board of more than 20 publicly listed companies across India, Sri Lanka, Japan, China, UK, and USA. He's a co-founder of the Chennai Business School and assists young professionals to study management post-graduation in important industry verticals. Of course, clearly, he has a viewpoint on how young employees, people that you bring in, how they're thinking and what we need to do as managers and founders and CEOs to be able to nurture that cadre. He's also co-authored India's Global Powerhouses, a book that was published by the Harvard Business School Press. He studied his undergraduate in chemical engineering and management at Bombay University and also at Harvard Business School. Thank you very much, Mr. Mohapatra, for joining us. He's also a very distinguished executive coach. He's co-founder of CFI. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate you coming despite he's in a lot of pain as well. So
no questions.
So we'll give your legs some time to settle down and begin with Mr. Mohapatra. So when we talk about high performance teams and next generation CEOs, what do you think in the Indian context, especially in the Indian mid-sized small businesses manufacturing contest, give us that context of where the leadership issue is right now, and how well do we understand people practices and how well equipped are Indian companies to be able to build organizations of the future.
Well, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good news is that you kept the best speaker occupying most of the time. So between both of us, we got 10 or 15 minutes. Is that all right?
No, we don't. We have much more. Don't worry.
Thank you. So what we ended up finally is an anxiety which got expressed. Namely, what's going to happen to labor? Where are we going to get migrant labor from? Now, in my profession, I keep going every month once to Kerala. And the purpose being to coach emerging entrepreneurs. For the 10 people I coach there together, of roughly about median revenue of about 300 crores. Now, my impression of Kerala is somewhat dated. 15 years ago, when I used to go to Kerala, people used to tell me, manufacturing business is dead in Kerala. So when I go back this time and hear 10, 300 crore companies perfectly happy with manufacturing business, so I figure something is happening there. So when I got down to one-on-one conversation, they tell me something very interesting. So remember, I'm speaking in the soil of West Bengal. They all told me that there are 2 ladies who are responsible for popping up Kerala's manufacturing business. And we're extremely happy. If we had the rights, we will give them Bharat Ratna. One is Didi from West Bengal. The other one is the lady Prime Minister from Bangladesh. He said, they are the 2 who are helping all the migrant labor to come into Kerala. He said, but I must confess that we are the top dog payer. West Bengal has never heard of paying the frontline labor 10,000 rupees. We pay 15 plus a place to live in. He said nobody in the right senses is going to work anywhere else but to come here. And of course, the unmentionable thing is that sooner than later, the migrant laborers are given a ration card. I'm not saying from which country or the region they came from. Now, that is truly the labor market today. And if you think you have actually seen the peak, more particularly those of you who are in the so-called emerging space, you haven't actually seen 5% of that. And you haven't seen what's going to happen to the executive labor market, going steps up, which actually has been happening for some time. Now, one of the questions, permit me to say 2 or 3 things, sir.
Of course.
So, one of the things that mid-cap companies never ask or never try to keep in their mind or back of their mind, why do people come to work for us? They don't ask that question, and I'm not saying the venerable audience here, but most people that I have come across, they don't ask that question because they seem to instinctively know why people come and work for them. When asked, why do people come and work for you, they kind of scratch their hair a little and say, well, you know how is it like? These guys are not exactly going to be chosen by Unilever or IBM or HP. So they come to us. Far from truth. Far from truth indeed. So my first call to emerging entrepreneurs is to figure out for themselves as to from where quality talent come and work for them. Truth is they get quality talent as much as Unilevers and IBMs get in this country. I remember an incident which happened in this city 30 years ago. I was making my career in Dunlop. There were rumors here and there talking about an Indian business group is going to come and take over this company. And some negotiations seem to be going on in London. Pretty soon, rumor appeared here and there to say RP Goenka group is going to come and take over. Now, we are all blue-blooded multinational company folks. So we began, those days we didn't have email. So we began to exchange notes with each other by saying, better keep your resignations ready. You don't know when it's going to get announced. We're not anytime soon going to work for some Indian owners. We don't know. We don't know what to expect out of them. What we hear is that maybe executives go shopping for them in Gariahat and such like stuff. That's not us. We are the Calcutta Club, one scotch in the evening kind of people. We don't work for Indian owners. This was the conversation going on when we received the invitation from a guy called John Hammond. He was our managing director, to say, you must be here. There is a cocktail at my place, and you will actually meet the new investors. So we said, hold on. We must give a chance. Let's figure out how the new investors are, since it's a godsend opportunity to meet him. There in John Hammond's private garden, we met for the first time Mr. R.P. Goenka. He came into this blue-blooded English company managing director's party in his inimitable dhoti and kurta. Shook hand with us. It was almost as if he had actually scanned all our brains and figured out what's going on in our minds. He knew without talking to any one of us. So after the usual round of drink got over, he was introduced and he was asked to speak. This is 30 years ago. Every word of it is there ringing in my ear. He said, friends, I have indeed bought over Dunlop. in India, along with a partner. And he said, I have a few things to tell you. And one of the things you may be thinking is that when Indian owners come in, they will bring along with them about 50 of their relatives, cousins and nephews and such like stuff. People think that way. People also think that some executives will be called upon for home duty, if not to go to Gariahat for shopping. Now, I would like to put few things straight. He said, first, is that you already know I have 2 sons. I am almost retiring from business. So you will have only 2 family members who will have anything to do. Actually, it may be only one, my younger son. I guarantee you that none of my other family members, larger, broader family, will have anything to do with the company. He added with a sense of humor that by that, don't for a minute think I don't have poor cousins. There are plenty of them. They come to me, but I tell them, I know what is good for you. Sit at your home. Every month I'll send you some money. Don't have nothing to do with my company. He said, because I know that if I have to grow from where I am to a large business, one of the things that I need to do is to depend on people like you all. He finally ended by saying, I invite all of you to give us an opportunity to work with the new management. Whole lot of us didn't look back for the next 30 years and continue to work. Now, one of the biggest values family business brought in, we didn't know that then, R.P. Goenka certainly knew, is really that while working for Dunlop or Lever or whatever, first thing first is that your bosses, the managing director, are changing every 3 years. One guy comes, he says, you know what, the only thing we're looking for is growth. I couldn't care less whether the company makes money or not. The next guy who turns up from the finance background actually tells you, who cares about your revenue? What kind of money have you made? We were tired of that. So the first value we learned is that there is great merit in working for a set of people who we know what their views about business is and what the view about us is. So one of the learnings that I'm leaving before I pass on is there are actually huge values that you all bring on the table for top quality professional executives. Sadly, many of you haven't figured out what's the real reason they come to work for you. Find that out, like R.P. Goenka. If you do, you're actually going to have lots of top quality people coming and working for you. That's my opening.
Thank you, Mr. Mahapatra. I think what you said was really about the leadership articulating a vision for the company and a way of being, right? What we call a workplace culture, and being able to articulate that and communicate that. Mr. Mukherjee, I'd like to bring you in. You know, how much of that, how easy or difficult is that to do, you know, and how much does it need the backing of the CEO? It really has to be from the top, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just realized the person who's standing between me and my dinner is me. So I'm going to make this really quick for all of you. And just looking back, you know, I just got this invite last evening saying that could I step in and talk about creating teams, excellent, best-in-class teams. And I've said, what have I really done? And I was reflecting back on my career, and I've created teams for General Motors in Kuwait, then in Russia, from scratch. After the Gulf War, and then Russia, they were insolvent. Went to Fort Lauderdale, created AutoNation USA from scratch again, a multi-billion-dollar company. Came back to India with American Express, created their entire back office for India and Philippines from scratch. And there's been HSBC Life as well, which we were the founder employees to create. But there's been a common theme that's been running across all of these in different geographies, different cultures, and different societies for me to make some generalized statements, exactly what Shreyoshi is doing. But just to look back and say exactly what Mr. Jairam said, that, you know, there's this culture of optimism in the air. There's enormous potential, and it's up to each of our organizations to go and grab it. And that optimism exists in this room. You can feel it by the questions you're asking and all the comments. But it's not we who are going to go and grab these opportunities. It's our organizations and our teams, right? So we need to be very, very clear as to what motivates them, what drives them, what must we consciously do. We do all the right things, or we think we do all the right things. And I'm going to lapse into a bit of theory, but those theory has been implemented in practice, you know. And same thing which Pradipta just said, the world is changing right now. When we were young, the question was, do you want growth and revenue or profits? And the right answer was yes. But now they're asking, do you want growth, revenue, profits, and make a social impact, and make an impact on our lives, and make a difference to our societies? So the whole population, the whole idea that is going to leapfrog all of your organizations to take India to the next step is really a very, very different set of people than when we were young and when we entered the, well, when I was young is much, much more than when you're young, much, much older. So if there is a common thread that links what makes an organization great, what makes a team great, you know, an individual or a team is great when it really realizes the purpose, that he has a purpose in life. When we keep talking about motivation factors of external motivation, which is like salary and income levels and designations, or internal, which is more longer lasting of job satisfactions and a purpose. And how do you create that purpose? How do people come to work every day for you, having that common purpose of the organization to grow this forward? I'm right now working for mentoring a couple of social organizations in Kolkata because I've just decided to take some step back and build up my balance in my Karma bank account, right? So what is happening, and I see these young girls in Metya Bros who are Muslim girls, and I'll just take 5 seconds, sir, if I may. As to the purpose question, you know, when we started the center, where iMerit provides or brings high quality IT jobs to local marginalized communities through technology. When we started that center a year and a half ago, Rehana had no place to go. And when we started the center in Metya Bros, there was no professional organization. She came over here, they used to literally hide from their parents and come. A year and a half later, their father is bringing the younger daughters and saying, "Aap ek ladki le li, dusri ko bhi le liye," which is a societal change. But more important from the employee's point of view, whenever in Kolkata, and blessedly it's been much, much less, that there has been a band or a holiday, and we run a couple of service desks which are 24/7 across Europe and US. These girls have actually come and with their beddings and all have stayed the night, saying that we will not let the company suffer, or there's a deadline. So that's when you realize that installing a purpose or installing that will to perform and achieve the values and the vision of the company is not just for the chartered accountants and MBAs and the people who are just making the decisions in your immediate teams. It's a vein that goes across the organization for your organizations to be truly successful. Now, what are the few things, and some of you might roll your eyes and say, this is too theoretical, is first thing is articulate your vision. What do you really want to be, and translate it down to real actionables to them. Relate the vision from their viewpoint, not from your viewpoint that we want to be the biggest. Understand the approach that they're coming from, that they can relate and see that we will make a difference. You know, so that's very, very critical. To the ownership and the purpose. Have this communication, and we talked about motivation already. Have this constant communication, reiterate, reiterate, reiterate. And one of the things I've really found is makes a difference is a very transparent measurement system. Because what you measure gets done. And once you have that transparency and the buy-in and the ethics, saying that I'm going to be completely fair, I'm going to do these stretch targets, but I have your buy-in, you buy into my vision, all of you, we are realizing that this is what the company is going to be, this is your opportunities, they will come forward and deliver that vision for you. So, a few key themes of really telling your vision, really translating it, be transparent, have the measurement techniques, and I've seen how the organizations that I've created or built up in the organizations, from pure finance functions to and across 1,000 people operational department. These common themes run through. So if you're really focused, you can't deliver the benefits of the organization. Your teams have to. So how do you really motivate your teams? And we can go and get into outside of the internal and external motivations and what works and what doesn't. On a longer term, I'd say focus on these key priorities, and that's it, you're a winner.
So before I ask you a rejoinder question, I just wanted to get a show of hands to see how many of you think that people and talent is what the top 3 concerns that you have right now. The ability to recruit, retain, motivate. Okay, the rest of you are doing, so that's around 15%. So I think there are lots of great lessons clearly from here. But I think what you were saying is implicit in that happening is trust and communication, right? And I think there the collaborative leadership model, which is now is what's considered relevant in the 21st century, really is much more sharing of information.
Absolutely.
And that's a big leap from even 20 years back, when there would be this much more distance and an information arbitrage between the owners and the promoters and the teams. You think we have to move, that entrepreneurs especially have to move away from task-driven objectives to their teams
objectives
to purpose-driven, like you were
to
saying.
purpose-driven. And those tasks are important, right? They have to perform those tasks to get the higher goal. But that linkage must be shown to them, that how important or critical their task is at a branch office, what they're doing, how it links up to the overall vision of the company. So that linkage is a...
You know, Mr. Mohapatra, you have an executive course, so you deal with exactly these problems. You know, a mid-sized company, a founder-driven company is so much who the entrepreneur is. And for transformations to happen in the company, there has to be a lot of internal transformation within the entrepreneur. That's not an easy thing to do. You know, what would you advise founders and managers to do? Where should they look for? How do they reskill, re-educate, and motivate themselves to be able to make these changes?
Well, for one, I have a coach, but I was going to come to a more serious one. This trust one is an interesting one. So I go around telling people, the old Bania way. Trust them, for sure, but test it out. So somebody who runs a business, food business, of about 200 crores in the state they operate, they're quite big in branded food. So there are 4 brothers who run it. And I must say they're getting quite tired of running the business. And business is not growing. Answer. Let's professionalize. Let's get professional managers. So the search, they found what they felt was a great professional manager who was working in the eastern region head of a large soft drinks company. He says, I'm now doing 2,000 crores revenue. He was the branch manager. And they said, oh, for him 200 crores means nothing. So we must get him. They bent over backward to be able to pay him his compensation. But he said, you know what? What I need over and above compensation is trust. They said, of course we trust you. That's where we're getting you in. He said, no, trust must really mean that you must give me absolute, unstinted, free hand to operate. And don't ask questions. I will, of course, come back to the board meetings every 3 months, and I will tell you how the company is doing. They fell for that one. They thought it's time they could go for a little vacation to Kashmir if people are going, or to Bangkok. And they got the guy and passed over the company to him. Soon they began to hear rumors, which is to say that the new manager is first getting rid of all old trusted employees. So they asked him softly, they said, but you have given me free hand, haven't you? Don't you trust me? He said, no, we trust you, but why are you getting rid of them? These are all dead-old. They don't have skills. You need skilled people to come in. So next round, he began to hire skilled people. For sure, younger people, but usually paying them between 2 to 3 times what the older people, the so-called loyal people, were getting. When those people came in, they also wanted trust and empowerment. The story carried on. The 4 brothers who owned the company, it took them 1.5 years to realize that the company has actually been taken to cleaners. namely a profit-making company, for the last 3 quarters have actually gone into significant loss. Bank overdraft has gone way beyond acceptable limits, at which point in time they figured out that this has been too much of trust in professionalizing. So they asked the man to go, and now licking the wounds, trying to recover to work overtime. Now, for God's sake, I'm not for a minute saying don't hire professional managers. The lesson here is that you must surely build trust. You must have great lot of trust, but as long as you really move slowly to build trust. The toughest challenge for family business and mid-cap businesses to grow up is that they haven't figured that there is actually a midway between day-to-day managing and completely hands-off. There is actually a significant middle path where they can actually communicate and set goals with the professional managers, but don't take the hands off completely. So how do you grow from a hands-on family manager to a supervising director of the company is a task that doesn't come easily. And that's what my recommendation to you, and who to work with. They all know who to work with. When I scratch the surface of mid-cap companies and ask them, do you have a trusted advisor? I said, yeah, for the last 20 years. The family for 3 generations have a trusted advisor. He said, who's the guy? Well, you know L.B. Subramanian and Company, Mukherjee and Company, usually the chartered accountants. My friend is one here. I can't say don't trust them. But usually,
Just did.
usually they have a chartered accountant who the trusted guy, go-to guy in any problem. Any problem, which hospital to get admitted for, surgery also, they have to advise. They're good guys, I have nothing against chartered accountant. But the moment you have grown beyond 10 crores revenue, please don't take him as the only advisor. There is scope for actually building skills yourself on how to grow bigger and how to get professional managers and trust them and get them to work for you.
I think that's a nice equation, a blend of, you know, entrepreneurial zeal and loyalty from the company plus professional skills, which is sort of the perfect recipe that you're suggesting. I'd like to throw open the floor for questions from some of you who raised your hand to say that people are one of your biggest concerns while running the business. Share your experiences with some of what we've discussed right now in terms of, you know, the journey to professionalize, the difficulties in finding good quality talent and trying to get them to work for brands that aren't as well known. If any of you have any questions or just experiences to share.
Just anecdotes to tell all of us.
Good, that's a signal. Which story? But amazing number go through the same experience rather than learning from other people.
That is true, sir. But the problem as this thing, if you trust and the person is also good, but suddenly there is in a middle level of businesses, the employee gets an offer from MNCs and double the salary and he leaves, then the whole thing gets into mess. Because a bigger organization can keep a senior manager, one junior manager, one assistant manager. But in middle level of businesses and small businesses, usually we see only 1 or 2 managers. And one fine day, the manager runs away without telling you after collecting his salary on the 7th of the month and you are nowhere. So that is the major problem of small and medium businesses.
So one of the assumptions that has been made already, I'm just provoking you, don't get me wrong. One of the assumptions that has already been made, and it is quite common, by saying, when these guys come to work for me, they are usually mercenaries. And every 3 or 6 months, they are floating their resume to hiring companies. And the moment they figure out that their real value is twice what I pay him, he will go away. Now let me debunk that one first. There are mercenaries. like in all of us, there are mercenary promoters, mercenary employees. A vast majority of them are not mercenaries. But having said so, the formula is that you can actually hire that guy somewhat cheaper than his real price if you give him lots of love and tender care and respect. But if you think you can hire him and keep him half his market worth, as you spoke, it is little far-fetched, because he's also gone through the school to have built some brain. So he's not willing to do that. If you ask me a good answer to it, how much many top quality professional managers are willing to compromise in monetary terms? They're quite willing to go right up to 25% compared to the market worth. The reason they will do that is because if they believe they can trust you. So do whatever you can to give him trust and give him respect. The money valuation of that is 25%. I know of a family from whom I worked. When I went into their room for the first time, the gentleman came out to see me off through his door, held the door for me to the elevator. I told myself, I've seen this. This is all only for the interview, for charming. I worked with the group for 25 years. All the 25 years, all the time I entered this gentleman's room, every time without fail, he will come and hold the door for me. He was my boss's boss when he was hired. And all the time he will come to the elevator to see me off. Once I asked in a private moment, I said, you have no idea how immensely it pleases paid executives like me. First, he laughed. And he said, you know what? He's a little big built. First, he said, it gives me opportunity for a little exercise, which I otherwise don't do. But let me tell you something. Since you have worked with us for so long, it also has a monetary return. He was so right. Because there are a whole lot of people willing to work for him at less than fair market price. Think of that.
And I'm a little big built myself, so I'll just continue on this. And he's absolutely right. You know, this is what I was talking about, the external motivation and the internal motivation. We keep saying to ourselves that we are providing the job satisfaction, we are providing the respect. Introspect back and see, are we really walking the walk over here? If we are, people at a certain level will willingly take, as Pradipta was saying, 25% cut to get the respect in the job, the recognition, the satisfaction that they have.
Mr. Mukherjee, just to add to that and to ask you a question, that, Mr. Jairam talked about the demographic dividend and, creating manufacturing jobs, and those young recruits will obviously be the manufacturing leaders or whatever. This new generation, as was borne out by the elections, they're decisive, but this is also a very different kind of employee it's a very different India that they've been bred into, the 1990s or the early 2000s, that they come in and they in fact are much more, see their careers and jobs as fulfillment, right, as a calling. So that bunch of people wants more from their job, wants more respect, wants more feedback, wants more mentorship. So isn't that something that the entrepreneurs here will have to keep in mind as they bring in new younger people?
No, and Shreya, absolutely right, as I was saying. You're dealing with a very, very different sector or class of people who will be coming into your organization with very different value systems across India. So there will be these aspirations. They will want them to be fulfilled. They're far more socially aware. They want to make a difference in their lives. It's not just coming to work and getting a paycheck anymore for them. They value their contribution, and that's where the conflict arises between the mid-sized organization's leadership and the fresh talent that is coming in. And when one of the topics that you had said was about conflict resolution, and because the change and the teams that you have. And the first thing that I've realized that when this happens is, take a step back. We think we really know what is this matter all about. We have been working in this business for 20 years. We know what we are giving, etc. And we need to pause, step back, and look at the situation from the eyes of this new team, from the eyes of these new people. So that's a quality that we must start introspecting ourselves if we want these hugely successful teams that we have to build and grow. That's absolutely right.
I think we're almost close to 9 p.m. and the three of us are between everybody's dinner. So questions, feedback, suggestions from anybody, and otherwise we'll close for the evening. Yes, sir, can we have a mic to him, please?
Your humors were very interesting about the motivation to the young generations and your leadership qualities. And I'd like to ask you something. Of course, young generations are coming in the enterprises, and of course they're leaving in also suddenly based on monetary benefits and whatever you said. I'd like to know how the young generations, managers or entrepreneurs, should judge the qualities of these young people. I mean, they're very fickle, too fast-minded. They can leave at any time. I mean, you train them up very well, give them the respect, what you said, give them the love, reduce 25% of the monetary value. But still, I mean, it's not that. The culture is not that. They might leave in seconds. How do you stop that?
So we
It's
clearly
happening.
see a lot of burnt fingers in trying to do some of what you're suggesting, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you really want to lock them in, then please hire condemned soldiers. Don't hire young people. So there is too much of comfort going to believe that they will all come work for me for the next 25 years. That is dead and gone in my generation. But there are lots of studies done on so-called Y generation and the next gen. So what seemed to be significantly different in them compared to the earlier generations of people, baby boomers and the X gen, is really say, the younger people think that actually they need to continually keep adding to their skills.
Absolutely.
They are obsessed that tomorrow I must be much more skilled than what I am today. So organization that alludes to adding skill to them, they love the organization and stay longer. May not be for the lifetime, but they stay there. Because they know some point in time, additional skill are encassable. Yeah. Okay? And that is the significant difference. So if you want to keep young people, have work where they believe their value adding to themselves continually. That's the formula many good employers realize.
Mr. Mukherjee, your quick thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I should have talked about is making your organization into a teachable organization. You know how Pradeep said, exactly how are you adding value to someone? Because everyone's realized the equation and the math over here. And as long as a person feels respected and he's adding value to his career, he will stay. They're very smart people over here.
Yes, sir.
See, through your experience of the immense corporate world, we would request you to briefly tell us how to change the strategy or shift gears at the topmost business management between two different eras. You are chasing growth, 5 years, you are continuously chasing growth. And suddenly some business speed breaker comes. And I'm 100% sure you have clearly understood the two sets of dynamics, chasing growth and then speed breaker and the belt tightening. How do you actually change the strategies and change the gears? Because both are very, very different set of dynamics with different sets of your own requirements out of the situation.
All right, so
In terms of resilience, agility.
yeah, you better give time. So I'm just going through a book which I strongly recommend to everyone. The book is called The Manager, written by a guy called, unlikely guy, called Mike Carson. Mike Carson. The book has nothing to do with management or any such thing. The book has got to do with what you all are very fond of, namely football. It talks about successful football coaches or the managers, particularly in Europe, and it draws certain lessons which are invaluable for people like us. Here is this wonderful interview with the famous Ferguson, the coach of United Manchester. So Ferguson says that not only I have gone through my whole life as a manager, I prepare and train young coaches and managers for football teams. He said, I find the difference between successful managers and not so successful managers, and therefore successful teams and not so successful teams, is where the manager is in perfect tune with the chairman, in this case, the owner of the team. So he said, if they are perfectly tuned, it is amazing how well it moves. Now, that one I'm putting across is because in a vast majority of, I don't want to repeat that fact, family managed businesses in this country, typically emerging family businesses in this country, the toughest challenge, hold your breath, is really quality communication between the father and son, between two brothers, worse between two cousins. So when the company comes to grinding and not doing as well, or the course has to be changed, usually there is a difference in view between the father and son or the two cousins or the two brothers. The sad part is they don't talk to each other. They have lunch and dinner with each other. When they meet each other, they greet each other by saying Pamparu, we have seen in this city, but they don't talk hard facts. So the guy who's sitting in the steering wheel doesn't know what the guy who is invested in the car, his views are. That is the cause for 80%, 70% of the time of kind of a derailing effect into mid-cap companies. Talk, formally talk, father and son must talk. In my early career, I had two English brothers. One was the managing director, one was the supply manager. In the office situation, the supply manager brother, hold your breath, who was the older brother, always addressed to the younger brother, who was the managing director, as sir. Outside the office, when they had a drink, he called him Alan. Now, there is great learning to be had from that. When father and son go to office, my strong recommendation is to deal with your father as the chairman of the company, take a formal proposal to him, make PowerPoint presentation, and say, these are my views. Comment on it. Build what is actually a view agreed between both of us. We don't do that. We talk in the dining table what to do.
I'm sorry, perhaps I've not been able to communicate my point, the employee policies, the team building up, the team retention, all those tools that you have used during the growth phase don't seem to be working anymore. You need to, change your strategies and change the gears. And then there's a whole lot of turmoil, those people whom you love to keep with you, suddenly, there's some kind of disenchantment between the top performers and the topmost management. That is a kind of situation where, how do you think the strategies need to be revisited and gears need to be changed?
So that one is a day-long work. But briefly put, there was an Englishman who used to hire for the British Indian Army. He writes one of his books by saying, we all know that the Sikh regiment are the bravest of the lot. They will chase the enemy, really far away. Why do you hire other regiments, including Bengal regiment and Bihar regiment? He has an answer. He said, you know what? When we need to chase the enemy away, we need to deploy Sikh regiment. But when the enemy is chasing your back, and you need to lie for the next 3 days at sub-zero temperature with no supply line of food, the regiment that you need to deploy is Maratha regiment. They will remain without food for 3 days and also start shooting. The analogy actually is that there are some fans of growth. There are others within your system who actually have an answer that when that old formula isn't working any longer, the new formula need to work. You need to find new talents. If they're kept within you, identified who's Sikh regiment and who's Maratha regiment, it works. But I don't agree what was said earlier. The large companies have manager, assistant manager, junior manager. In your team, it is easy to identify who have the aggression for growth and who really had conservative to hold back finances. So you need to work and identify
Mr.
that.
Mukherjee, also, I think his question also is that how do you build resilience and agility? You know, the last 18 months has been a very different economic climate. Now you want to chase growth because you think the next 18 months
Correct.
will be one of growth. How do you build organizations which, you know, can move between these very turmoil
Yeah,
times?
I'll just revisit your question for a while, and we can discuss this when we're having dinner. There is no conflict in this growth and profit stage. You know, it has to, the answer, as I said, when somebody asks, do you want growth or do you want profits? The answer is yes. So how you do that is through a formula. You gear the organization to that. And we'll have this separate conversation because I was just in a tea garden at my friend's last week. And we spoke about exactly the same thing. He said, I've been focusing on growth, but now I'm bleeding money. Can you help? So we'll talk about that. But your point is absolutely valid. When the company as a whole, and I've gone through this in the insurance sector, I've gone through this with the large insurance companies who went for just growth, and the capital dried up, and they said we have to conserve. There is no more capital coming in, and we have to start making profits and stop this bleeding losses. It is an enormously difficult situation at that point of time. So that's when you really look back and you really take the measurement of people as saying, if this is your new strategy, that's good. And that's a whole lot strategy discussion. But that exactly what Pradipta said, the communication of the new strategy, of really distilling it down through the organization. And it's true, it can be done because it's very easy to say you can continue on that path and be successful. You can't. So you've really, the external environment has changed so much, you need to reassess and put in a different trail or a path to follow to, which is fair because the environment has changed. But at the same time, the way the team and the organization works is really take measure of the contribution, which all of you guys will do, because you really, at those hard times, you really assess who's doing the good job. And that's where the assessment continuously comes in a transparent way, and the communication values come in.
I'm sorry, I really have to close the session now. It's almost 9:15 and only when it was getting very, very interesting, but sorry about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukherjee, Mr. Mohapatra, for obviously very short notice in coming and taking this very, very fascinating discussion. Thanks to all of you for joining us. There is a feedback form. Can I request? There's a feedback form on your tables. Please, please, please do fill it out. So next time when, you know, Kotak and Inc. is in Kolkata, we can do a better job. We can do more sessions. So let us know. And of course, there's dinner and cocktails. So please join us. Mr. Jairam, Mr. Mohapatra, Mr. Mukherjee will be joining us through dinner, so you can hunt them down for questions then. Thank you, everybody. I hope you had an enjoyable session.